Madam President, I here again to urge the Senate to free up capital for small businesses to allow them to grow, expand, and begin hiring again. Now, unfortunately, there's a burdensome federal regulation that currently limits the number of small business loans credit unions can make to family entrepreneurs. Credit unions have money to lend, and they know small businesses in their communities, and they know that these businesses desperately want to jumpstart our economy by taking out new loans to grow their companies, I should say, and hire more workers. 2 weeks ago, I came to this very floor to ask consideration of a bipartisan amendment, Senate Amendment 242, which I offered to the underlying bill to raise this cap that I've alluded to on small business loans. The amendment would simply get government out of the way and allow credit unions to increase small business lending in their communities without costing American taxpayers a dime. I want to repeat that, Madam President. It would not cost American taxpayers a single dime. Now, when I've spoken on the Senate floor previously in support of this amendment and asked for the amendment to be considered, the chair of the Small Business Committee, Senator Landrieu, objected to my request and indicated that Senator Johnston, the new chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, opposed the amendment. And I wanted to clear up some misinformation that the American people may have heard at that time, and thank Senator Landrieu for removing from the congressional record her assertion that Chairman Johnson opposed my amendment. I understand that as the new chairman of the Banking Committee, Senator Johnson has an interest in revisiting this legislation, which I negotiated with the Treasury Department, the National Credit Union Administration, and the previous chairman of the Banking Committee, Senator Chris Dodd. But I would like to make it clear in the congressional record that Chairman Johnson does not, in fact, oppose this amendment. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to clear up some confusion related to the $30 billion Small Business Lending Fund established as a part of the Small Business Jobs Act, which arose when I tried to call up my amendment 2 weeks ago. As I pointed out in my original remarks, banks were given access to the Small Business Lending Fund, but credit unions have not been allowed to expand their small business lending because of the very cap on loans my amendment addresses. In our discussion here on the Senate floor, it was pointed out to me that credit unions had been asked if they wanted to participate in the Small Business Lending Fund, but that the credit union industry had turned down that invitation. I was unaware of such an offer, and I appreciate being told of it. But I would also point out that unlike many banks, most credit unions do not need extra capital in order to make loans, which is what the Small Business Lending Fund intended to provide. Rather, like I've said, most credit unions currently have capital to lend to small businesses, but unfortunately they are being prevented from making those loans due to the arbitrary cap limiting their small business lending to no more than 12.25% of their assets. So it's no wonder that credit unions didn't have an interest in the $30 billion bank fund, because they don't need the money and couldn't use it anyway because of this burdensome cap that's put on small business loans. So, Madam President, I appreciate the opportunity here today that maybe has arisen around confusion that regarding my amendment, Senate Amendment 242. I thank the Small Business Committee Chair and Ranking Member for their great work on the underlying bill, which is very important to my home state of Colorado. Now, I really wish my amendment would get a vote today, but regardless of what happens today, I'm going to continue to work with Chairman Landrieu, Ranking Member Snow, and the rest of my colleagues to find innovative means to free up credit for small businesses in a responsible way. And on a final note, Madam President, you hail from a great state that has a significant banking and credit union sectors both. We know that they don't always see eye to eye, which is the root of objection to my amendment. They still manage to operate side by side to serve their community's credit needs. Well, why? Because they both make up the fabric of America, and continuing to grow our economy is simply the way we do business in the United States of America. And I'd like to highlight that spirit, which is in stark contrast to the kind of divisive politics that have been brewing in America. one that furthers disagreement, draws ideological lines in the sand, and frankly sows disrespect at the expense of shared interests and collective prosperity. And the American people are seeing a disappointing example of that today. There's a vocal minority outside this very Capitol demanding acrimony and combative approach from members of Congress, which I believe, and many of us believe in the end, will just further disable our capacity to get our economy back on its feet. Now, while this is happening outside, many of us here are inside doing the people's business. We treat each other with respect, and we're here working on a bill to help small businesses invest in R&D, and we're also negotiating a compromise to keep our government running. That's the American way I've always known, and I applaud my colleagues who remain committed to working together.